Intelligent Cycle, and I'm here to talk about the movie Until Dawn. So, one year after her sister disappeared, Clover and her friends head to the remote valley where she had vanished to search for answers. Exploring an abandoned visitor center, they soon encountered a mass killer who murders them one by one. And however, when they mysteriously wake up at the beginning of the same night, they're forced to relive the terror over and over again. And also, this is directed by David F. Sandberg, and Ella Rubin, who plays the character Glover. She is tormented and traumatized over the fact about her sister's mysterious disappearance. So her and her friends are going through and end up heading down to the remote valley. But before they even did that, they end up going and encountering this guy who's a gas station clerk at the clerk shop, who ends up at and they end up and she ends up asking him questions about who been going down to this valley and who's been mysteriously disappeared. And so once they went down there, they encounter a lot of mysterious like creatures and zombies and appearances. But what happens is when until they end up having to encounter a whole lot of demons and wicked spiritual uh, and witchcraft and wicked spiritual people. And so once they encounter something like that, it ends up getting a warning and a cryptic message saying that they had to, in order to leave this remote valley territory, they had to have to stay overnight in order for them to fight for survival, for their problems to end up being resolved towards that latter half. And so they had to stay overnight until dawn at this remote cabin. And so once they find out about this cabin, it ends up being haunted. It ends up being, you know, not exactly what they end up having to be desired for. And so we end up seeing Abel. We end up seeing Abel. We end up seeing Max, Nina, and Megan. All of them, are frightened and scared. But except for the character Clover, played by Ella Rubin, she's pretty much the only one that's non-fearful. She's pretty much the only one that's been fighting for survival. She's going there and she wanted to accomplish a goal. She wanted to accomplish a mission, and she wanted to get answers to find out what happened to her sister in order to get over, her a tragic, at the same time, a tragic loss. But they end up reading this book. They end up reading this book and filling out this book that they saw in this cabin. And what happens when once they fill it out the same book, they end up seeing that Melanie, her sister, Glover's sister, was the same. It's the same person that filled out this same book at this cabin and end up visiting there. And she end up getting taken and getting up taken captured and taken alive. She ends up getting bit along with other people that end up being missing at this same remote cabin. End up getting bitten by these zombie creatures. So the movie ends up in telling about a zombie apocalypse. And once they end up finding out the real details about what happened, that this remote valley and in this cabin ends up being the same cabin along with this same town in this same valley that ends up being underground, and it ends up becoming an underground wasteland of an experiment that ends up killing over 1,100 people. And these 1,100 people that end up getting killed, some wee hours, a long time ago, ends up being the same people that, hurt and affected them, hurt and affected, Glover and her friends, and they all wanted to try to leave and end up getting out of this same house, this same cabin. But they couldn't end up escaping because this same mass killer that had following them, had been stalking them all night, been stalking them all day, and also a lot of these zombie creatures that end up peddling and creeping around the house. And then once they end up around inside of the cabin, they end up finding a secret vault lair that end up being a hideout and a whereabouts by the same doctor. But later on in the movie, as we see, the same doctor that Dr. Alexander Hill, actually was a test subject in humans, in order for them to be locked in a closed circuit area, locked in a closed, hidden area behind some bulletproof glass. because Max, he ends up playing a video. He ends up playing a video of the same Dr. Alexander Hill who ends up talking in this same video on this VHS of him doing test subjects on these patients that he's been secretly working with. I mean, that he has been working with under behind the scenes. And so we end up seeing that. And Clover is, worrisome because she worrisome about her sister end up being missing along with these same people that end up getting tortured, end up getting kidnapped and held up in this same cabin, end up getting bitten and end up turning into bloodthirsty, blood-suckling zombie creatures. And we end up seeing them end up having an absolute remote and apocalypse. So also later on in the movie, Megan, she is she ends up being more or less the character that I really like in the movie. She ends up being more so the logical person. She's the more the brains that operate. She's more logical. She's more sound. She tries to come up with ideas to how to end up escaping this cabin and end up having to escape this same remote valley area. And she finds out more and more that it's a bit more of like a ritual cult, like a satanic cult, because she ends up getting stalked down and getting brought down by these same zombies through this whole bulletproof glass. She end up getting kidnapped and end up getting halted and hot and tortured and bullied and beaten up and closed into this same circuit hideout that the same doctor ends up holding up these creatures in. And then once we end up seeing that Clover and Max, they all wanted to figure out where Megan was, and then Abel was pretty much, he was pretty much totally against finding out anything about the answers about what happened to, Clover's sister, and end up finding out answers about what's going on with the cabin. He wants to try to get up out of there as soon as possible. And his character I really didn't like in the movie. And the reason why I didn't like his character is because he seemed to be pretty much, pretty much a hothead. He seemed to pretty much be irrational. He seemed to be pretty much irrational, illogical, and not coming up with any kind of solutions. But also wanted to become a problem. A problem for everything. A problem for Clover, a problem for Nina, his girlfriend, and a problem, for her friends. And Abel is trying to be pretty much a smartass at the end of the day. He's trying to be too much all about himself and not all about the greater cause and the greater good. So I didn't really care for his character in the movie. Max, that's played by Michael Cimino. He's more or less one of the friends that I think wants to try to find what happened to Glover's sister. He wants to try to find answers as well, but I feel like he also is paying attention more so to his surroundings and the surroundings of his of Clover and Nina and everybody else, Megan and everybody else. I figured that the character Max wants to put more onus on himself and put more onus on sticking together like a wholesome crew. I didn't feel like his role. I didn't feel like he wanted to be better or bigger or more overall output than more than anybody else. I figured like he wanted to stick together with his friends. And also I think the doctor played by Peter Skidmore as Dr. Alexander Hill. His character I really didn't trust in the movie as well. Because we end up seeing him being more or less at the time working in the gas station, but later on in the movie we end up seeing his character and who he evolved and who he really is. I didn't really care for him either. I never trusted him from the beginning. I figured he had something. He had a lot of things scheming, a lot of things in plan, from throughout the beginning of the film. I feel like he had something planned. He had something sneaky. He had something scheming going on from the beginning. So I never really trusted him. He had like some wicked intentions, some kind of like bad decision making, bad intentions on top of it all. I didn't really trust Glover's other friend played as Abel. I never really trusted him because he seemed like he was all about himself. So breaking down that part about the movie, and again, I never really played the video game at all whatsoever, and I didn't even know this was a video game uh, from like the early 2010s, I believe. I never really know that. I never really played the game. A couple of my friends, I grew up with in the past, kind of played this game before, and they liked it. So I was like, you know what? Let me try it out. Let me try to see what was all the hype about, and about the game. And then I played it once, and then not only that, I was like, you know what? Let me see what was going on. So I was like, okay, this is cool. And so knowing that, and then of course knowing that the movie was coming out, I was like, okay, I'm already interested. I'm already interested to see what's going on because this already has something that I'm intrigued. And I hadn't seen the trailers until this past week, and when I saw the trailers, I really liked what was going on. So I really like what's going on. I really like the mysteriousness of it, the creepiness, the eerie, cultic vibe. I really like that style in horror, especially for the video game, especially in video game like atmosphere and culture, because we don't really get these kind of movies like this that really kind of just shake you up to the bone, shake you to the core. I like that about films, and I think this one gave me that. Uh, so getting back to the part of the movie, so we end up seeing that Glover and her friends end up killing each other, over and over and over, constantly and repeatedly, because it goes by this same central theme. In order for them to survive, they had to stay and survive until dawn overnight. In order for them to survive, in order for them to get away from the cult-like, the zombie creatures, the same mass killer, and then find out who was all responsible, who was controlling these people, who was controlling who was controlling the surveillancing everybody, watching over us, and surveillancing this outcome. So that would be the thing that they end up having to figure out. And then Clover was told by this witch, who ends up committing suicide on herself. She ends up killing herself. And so throughout the movie, Glover is thinking of plans and thinking of ways, and also Megan is thinking of ways and thinking of plans of figuring out how to get out of this predicament, get out of this situation. So we saw that throughout the movie, and we also saw that Max was coming up with had weapons, and the rest, and Glover and the rest of her friends had weapons too. And they end up looking at the signatures that they signed in the book in the previous scenes in the beginning of the movie, that it ends up tying back, and also the pictures that Abel end up seeing in another locked storage room facility, in a room facility in this same cabin, ends up turning out to be the people that has been missing, the people that have been killed and been lost and have been reported on the news. So that was the main thing that it solved throughout the movie. So that was really, really interesting and pretty intriguing for me. And that gave me some instances. I was like, okay, I wonder where this is going to go next. And then we end up finding out about Dr. Hill, Alexander Hill, and he ends up having a conversation later on with Clover, after Glover and her friends end up going inside of this vault room, and the same vault room ends up having all of these creatures, ends up having all these zombie creatures, and all of them, caged and locked up and chained up and everything. So we end up seeing that becoming a big factor. And once he had the conversation with Clover, and she asked him, she was like, "Why are you doing this? Why are you going, down this road, and why are you going down this route?" And he was like, because I like torturing people. He basically said he's like torturing people. He like, hurting the ones who've been loved, who they think they love, more or less at the end of the day. And then figuring out a lot of the toxic water a lot of the a lot of the things that was killing them and hurting them and end up blowing himself. A lot of end up blowing Clover and blowing her friends up. She used this same thing. I was like, and it was kind of getting predictable in my end. It's kind of getting a little bit predictable. I was like, okay, it's gonna go down this direction. It's gonna go down this route. You're gonna like use the same like coffee coffee mug and try to tip it over and like try to kill him. Okay, I'm like, I know it's gonna go in this direction. Then they end up. Oh, and I also forgot to mention about the necklace too. I forget somebody. I think Melanie was wearing. Oh, her sister Melanie was wearing, and I think the same necklace they end up finding and discovering. And I was like, okay, okay, I think it's gonna go down in this direction with the necklace part. I was like, okay, it's gonna go into a direction where I'm like, yeah, they're gonna find a way to survive. They're gonna find a way to get out of this mess, this predicament. So that'd be the main thing. So my major pros, my biggest pros throughout the movie, I really do like the overall atmosphere, the tone, and overall the vibe of the film. I feel like it was very, very uh, climactic. It was very, very on point by the numbers. I feel like it was straightforward. I really do like the characters, mainly Clover, mainly Max, and Nina and Megan. I really do like their characters, and also I really do like the overall tone and the vibe of the film, and the pacing also was really really nice as well. Very short, hour and 43 minutes, so it flew by fast to me. Didn't feel like nothing was dragging along. Didn't feel like nothing was taking a roll down, taking its time. It didn't feel like anything was slowing up. It didn't feel like certain things was missing. It felt like everything was just going straight ahead and aligning with each other. Didn't feel like I was getting bored or looking at my watch or looking at my phone or anything. I felt like I was just there and I'm just enjoying it and I'm entertained. So it's a very entertaining movie, and that's the one thing, the entertainment. And also another pro was the fight sequences between Glover and her friends and the zombies. I thought that was nice. I really do enjoy that part about the movie. I thought that was really interesting. Also, another big pro is the overall visuals. The visuals and the overall shots, well, overall camera shots was very, very gloomy and atmospheric. It's another thing that was a big highlight of the film for me. Um, the biggest negative, the biggest major flaw throughout the movie is the third act. As and I kind of broke it down also with the storyline. It's like I felt like it was getting very unreasonable and unrealistic. And what I mean by that is you can kind of tell where certain scenes and certain areas of the movie was going. And I was like, okay, it's gonna go in this direction, it's gonna go in that direction. You can always point it out, obviously midway by midway point, like, okay, it's gonna go down this direction. Oh, you're gonna try to kill the doctor, you're gonna try to flash back to a scene memory about the necklace. Oh, you're gonna try to flash back to certain scenes about, and then also looking at the meter watch, or the meter watch that's on the hidden clock watch that's up there on the board. Like if it flips over, that means that they only have to stay over another night. So they've been there for so many nights, and I'm like, yeah, you can tell it's kind of getting predictable a little bit towards that third act, and I didn't really think they figured out a way to end it properly. So that'd be the main issue that I had with the film, is that part alone. So I think that the third act just didn't overall stick the landing to me, and it didn't really feel like it was something there. Um, so my overall thoughts about the movie is I actually enjoyed this movie, man. I really did. Um, Everything from the beginning was really nice. I thought the overall characters was really solid. I thought they all have the right amount of screen time. I thought they had the right amount of overall like setup and build up. I thought the chemistry and the dialogue was really on point for the most part. I do think the third act could have been very much better. I think it could have been and went into a completely different direction. The ending per se, I didn't think they ended the film properly, in my opinion, and I think they need the overall writing could have been better in the third act, and I think the overall ending sequencing could have been better to me. So that'd be the main thing I would say that could be a flaw for some people when they're going in to watching it. And also going in there and watching it and don't have that many high expectations for it. Because I didn't either, and I came out impressed with it. So I would say check this one out. My rating for the film I give it a solid 3 stars out of 4, about a 7.5 out of 10. I think it's a solid watch. It's definitely one of the better zombie movies I've seen so far this year. So yeah, definitely go ahead and give it a watch. You'll definitely come into it and enjoy it, man. So that's my overall thoughts about the movie Until Dawn. So tell me what you guys think about it down in the comment section below. Um, I want to say thank you guys for liking and sharing and subscribing to the chat page, because I'll be coming back with more movie content, because the next movie I'm about to do is Thunderbolts, which is coming out on Friday. Cannot wait to see that. I like the trailers from what I saw, and it's giving me a lot of hype for it. So thank you all for watching, and I am out. Peace.